Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Palestine remains to be one of the most long-standing issues on the United Nations agenda, despite several United Nations resolutions regarding the two-state solution, as well as the illegality of the Jewish settlements in the Palestinian territories. Israeli atrocities on innocent Palestinians continue unabated. Over 120 people have been killed by Israeli armed forces in the West Bank and other Palestinian territories this year alone. And there has been blatant violation of human rights at the same time by the Israeli forces over there as well. Now, most recently, a blockade of Nablus has entered its 8th day as Israeli forces have launched a crackdown to hunt the members of a group that is known as Arin al-Usud. And this crackdown has clearly disrupted the life over there in the Palestinian territories, especially in Nablus and the surrounding areas, as well as the economic activity has had a very negative effect also because of this crackdown. Now, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shatai visited the Jenin camp and condoled with the families who have been the target of the Israeli brutalities. And this was responded with anger by the Israeli authorities. And in another latest turn of events, Australia has reversed its earlier decision of recognizing Jerusalem as the Israel's capital. And this particular thing has also been dealt by Israeli authorities with anger. Now, when it comes to the question of Jerusalem, it remains to be the most contentious issue between the Palestinians and Israel. Our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that report first, and then we'll be joined by an esteemed panel of guests today to discuss this burning issue. Let's watch the report first.
Despite passing of several decades, the Israeli aggression on Palestinians cannot be stopped by the world powers and organizations which always remained advocating liberalism, multilateralism, and positive global peace. The criminal silence of the world powers is actually aggravating the social and economic oppression of the Palestinians. However, Pakistan, while fulfilling its international moral responsibility, raised its voice against the aggressive repression of Palestine as well as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and urged the United Nations to take concrete steps to address the situations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and Palestine, where people are still forcibly denied the right to self-determination. Ambassador Imran Khan, Deputy Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations, while speaking in the General Assembly's Legal Committee, said that there will be no peace in the Middle East or South Asia until the Palestinian people and the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are enabled to exercise their right to self-determination. On the other hand, Australia, while playing its part, said that it will no longer recognize West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, reversing the decision taken by the government of former Prime Minister Scott Morrison in 2018. Foreign Minister Penny Wong said in a statement that today the government has reaffirmed Australia's previous and long-standing position that Jerusalem is a final status issue that should be resolved as part of any peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian people. Wong reiterated that Australia's embassy would remain in Tel Aviv and that Canberra was committed to a two-state solution in which Israel and a future Palestinian state coexist in peace and security within internationally recognized borders.
Just watch the report. Pakistan has always held a long-standing position regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and has always urged the international community to resolve the issue as per the relevant United Nations resolutions. Let's jump into the discussion right away. We are honored and privileged to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Nader Alturk, who is Counselor, Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Media and Civil Society, Embassy of the State of Palestine in Pakistan. Excellency, thank you very much for your time at PTV World.
Thank you for giving me the honor to be your guest today, to speak to my brother and sister through your noble channel today.
Wonderful. Pleasure to have you. And we are also privileged and honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Tughral Yamin. He is Senior Analyst. Dr. Yamin, thank you very much for your time also.
Thank you very much.
And we are also privileged and honored to have been joined on the Skype from Potsdam, Germany by Mr. Harley Schlanger. He is political analyst from Schiller Institute. Mr. Harley, thank you very much for your time at Views on News. Also, we really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for your invitation to discuss this very important topic.
We're really honored to have you on the show. So let's begin the discussion with you, Mr. Alturk. Now, there is a turn of events as Australia has reversed its decision over recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. How do you see primarily this decision?
Actually, this decision was a right step in the right side and the right road. We appreciate it too much, and we hope other countries going to take the same step, especially the Americans, which during Mr. Trump period, he was pushing all the world to take step to remove their embassy from Tel Aviv to be in Jerusalem. As you know before, Mr. Trump, it was a decision taken by the Congress, American Congress, to shift their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But each president came in power, he was delay the decision for 6 months, and every 6 months he renewed the delay of that until Mr. Trump arrived to power, and he decided to shift the embassy of the USA to East Jerusalem, ignoring the international decisions and international resolution we speak, and they decide that Jerusalem, it is occupied territories. It is according to 181 resolution, which was taken in 1947. That decision was giving for the Jew 56% of the land of Palestine, and giving for Palestinians only 44%, and East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem was part of the Palestinian territories. It's going to be international territory for 10 years. After that, the people there going to decide which country going to follow. Actually, Mr. Trump ignored all of that, and he using the power of America to push his friends and the countries to normalize the relationship with Israel on the one hand, and the other hand, he asking the European countries and other world countries who have embassies in Tel Aviv to shift their embassy to be in Jerusalem, which is illegally. And according to that, we appreciate the Australian change their mind and say this is not right and come back to be in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem.
So, Mr. Alturk, what do you think, what prompted specifically when we talk about former President Mr. Donald Trump to reverse a long-standing position of the US also, because it's also been talking about the two-state solution as per the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and shifting of the capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem remains to be illegal, no matter if the US goes with that move or no matter any other country goes with that move, because as per the UN resolutions, which you already mentioned also, it remains still to be illegal.
Whatever the Americans take a decision, it's right or wrong, we need to go back to the international resolution. America is just one state out of 194 states are members in the United Nations. So whatever, they are one of the superpower countries, it is one of the, the members of the Security Council, but that doesn't mean their decision is going to be the legal decision for the international society. I have between my hands, if you like, I like freely.
Please go ahead.
Okay, a map for Palestine, please, if you can focus on what
that's basically whenever there were wars fought between the Arab states as well as the
Even
Israelis.
And here we see the map of Palestine in 1948. The whole of the land is Palestinian.
Exactly.
Land.
If I would request my cameraman to just zoom in this one a little bit.
This is the borders. There is no Israel. All the green is Palestinian territories. The majority of the people who are living there are Palestinians, Muslim, Christian, some few of Jew was about 3 to 7% of the people. Later on, God's Bell community came and said that the Greenland going to be the state of Palestine, and the other, the few is going to be a Jewish state. Later on, the resolution was taken by the Assembly by United Nations in 1947, which we speak 181 resolution.
The partition plan.
Yes, partition. It's giving 56% of the land for the Jew when there was only 30% after transfer from European countries or other refugees during the Second War. And before that, between the First War and the Second War, there was come other refugees for the Palestinian land and lived there. And after that, the United Nations, without asking or requesting approval of the Palestinian people, the real owner of the land, decide to give them 56% of the land when there are only 30% of the people. Later on, in
1967 happens to be the most crucial year as far as this relationship or the conflict is concerned, because the major usurping of the Palestinian territories, including the Sinai Peninsula,
after 1940,
Jerusalem.
Actually, after 1948, Israelis didn't take only 56% of the land; they take 78% of Palestine, occupied 78% of the land. And we only get 22% of the land, which
after
is West Bank.
1967 war.
Yes. After 1967 war, 100% of Palestine become under the Israeli occupation.
Right.
And remain until now. After that, Mr. Trump came again and make our homeland more smaller. When he take about 35% of West Bank lands and give it as a gift for the Israelis for free. So this is, we start with this, and we arrive to this according to the deal of the Senate.
Very continuous and the swift usurping of the territories, the Palestinian territories by the Israeli occupation forces.
But still, all of this decision are illegal, not accepted by the international community, not accepted for the most of the countries around the world, not accepted by the United Nations, and it still remain same. So what Mr. Trump do is not acceptable for the whole the world. And if he go with his deal for the Security Council, and he get only, after he shifting his embassy to Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, he getting only his voice, okay, to support him, and 14 members of the Security Council refuse that step. And that's why we said that the Australian decision was step in the right. It is welcomed by all the world and by the Palestinians. We appreciate it, and they are really become in the right side of history. And this is going to be good for the next generations.
Right. Mr. Alturk, you elaborately and very comprehensively showed the viewers that how Israeli authorities illegally occupied the Palestinian authorities, and over the years and decades they had been usurping Palestinian rights and territories by constructing illegal settlements over there as well. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, now 1967 war remains to be the most crucial and the turning point when we talk specifically about this conflict, because the Sinai Desert up to Suez Canal was usurped by Israeli occupation forces. They took Golan Heights from Syria as well, and the West Bank from Jordan was also taken by Israeli authorities with full possession of Jerusalem.
Tehami Sahab, it's a very good question, but I would like to go back to the map which was shown by Mr. Alturk.
Right.
There's a striking similarity between what has been happening in Palestine and what has happened in Kashmir.
Right.
Both the issues came to the fore almost in the similar time frame, and the UN resolutions also in the same time frame, 1948, 1947. 1948 resolution about Kashmir says that there should be a referendum and the wishes of the people should be accepted. What has been happening in Kashmir, similarly as in Palestine, the Indians have been usurping the territory. It's illegally occupied, and the final nail in the coffin was struck by Narendra Modi when he illegally usurped the entire territory of Jammu and Kashmir and made it into union territory. Exactly like that. I was just wondering in my mind's eye that what is this? What striking resemblance between both issues, and whereas the Palestinian issue still makes headlines, unfortunately, the world is absolutely silent about Kashmir. Yes, you are absolutely right. Coming back to your question, 67 was a year when Palestine lost a lot of its territory. The Arabs lost the 6 Day War was a disaster. The Egyptian Air Force was decimated. Jordanians lost control over lots of territory. And in 1968, we know after Jerusalem was captured by the Israelis, we know that they burnt the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the first Qibla. The Holy Prophet prayed towards that Qibla before orders were given that he should turn towards Makkah al-Mukarramah. So it was burnt, it was arsoned, and we know that in 1968 the OIC came into being because we felt very unhappy with what the Israelis were doing. But again, unfortunately, the Muslim Ummah as such has lost interest in Palestine. It's a pity the way our brothers are falling over backwards or forwards to normalize this relationship with Israel and to recognize Israel and to forget about Palestine. It's a pity. I think in this entire scenario, Pakistan, despite its dire straits, we had floods, and I'm so happy that the Palestinians showed such generosity of sending us aid.
Exactly.
Because of, again, despite dire straits, they helped us. So Pakistan's stance on Palestine has been very consistent. We are for the two-state solution, which is the only way forward right now. Otherwise,
for sustainable peace in the region.
For
Dr.
peace
Tughral, I mean, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you with certain other points to be discussed. Now, Mr. Harley, when we talk about Australian decision, it has reversed its decision it made 4 years ago of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. How do you see this particular decision? It has been met and responded by Israeli authorities with anger.
Well, not surprisingly, because the Israelis are accustomed to having full support for their policies against the Palestinians. I would suggest we raise this to a higher level to take a look at how this fits in with what's going on in the world today. We see a resurgence of European colonialism in the statement of Joseph Borrell, the EU foreign minister, who described Europe as a garden and the rest of the world as a jungle. You know, the situation with Ukraine, where you have a commitment to spend billions of dollars to fund so-called freedom and democracy in Ukraine, and yet a blind eye, as your guests have pointed out, has been turned to the plight of the Palestinians. That is de facto support for Israeli colonialism. Now, my view is that maybe perhaps what Australia is reflecting is what's happening around the world, a rejection of the City of London, Wall Street dominated world because of the Russian resistance to that in Ukraine. The Western world is demanding that the whole planet submit to Western domination. And we're seeing now country after country rebelling. The Saudis, for example, breaking with the Biden administration on the oil pricing. We're seeing China getting supported because China is spending money to develop countries, including the expectations that they will help rebuild Iraq and Syria. As far as Palestine is concerned, I think that it's urgent that there be an aggressive campaign once again to point out to the West the hypocrisy of claiming the support for freedom and democracy and that ignoring what's being done to the Palestinian people. And to me, whether Australia was doing that intentionally or not, there should be a movement around the world to call attention to the fact that the hypocrisy of the West is going to eventually be defeated because the rest of the world is now seeing that you don't have to submit to the policies of neocolonialism. So it's my hope that we can use the situation, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's the post-Afghan war rebuilding Afghanistan, or providing justice to the Palestinian people. This is on the agenda for much of the world. Whether the West will come around to see it or not, that's the real question.
Right, Mr. Harley, when specifically we talk about Australian decision, as you already raised a question whether the Australians are doing it intentionally or not. Now, they have given a response. The Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, has said that Australia reaffirmed long-standing position that status of Jerusalem should be resolved as per the peace negotiations between Israel and Palestinians. And she went on to say that Mr. Morrison's decision to play politics resulted in Australia's shifting position just to get that mileage in the electoral process. Your take on this, sir?
Well, I'm not sure enough about Australian politics to comment on that directly, except it's just simple logic. How can leaders of countries turn a blind eye to justice? And the idea for so many years has been that the Jerusalem resolution cannot jump ahead of the solution to the two-state solution for Palestine. What it shows me is that when Trump did this, and I think Trump did it out of ignorance and an attempt to appeal to the so-called Christian Zionists in the United States. But the policy of the United States has been that you cannot resolve the situation in Palestine by moving the embassy to Jerusalem. That's a provocation. And so the fact that the Australians moved back away from that, to me, is a step forward. The question is, what about Biden? What about the Americans? What about the Europeans? Are we going to see a similar recognition that Jerusalem is the status of Jerusalem has to depend on a solution to the two-state problem? And until that happens, you're going to see the kind of insanity of the Israelis feeling a free hand to carry out their attacks on the Palestinian people. So I think we've got to fight for justice for every nation, and that includes primarily the long overdue justice for the Palestinian people.
Right, Mr. Harley, in the news we've seen now the UK is also preparing to shift its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Do you think they are going to think over this decision after the decision which has been taken by Australians?
Well, I think the political situation in the United Kingdom is so chaotic right now that I don't think anything's going to happen there in the near term because of the economic crisis. There are groupings within the Labour Party, for example, in the United Kingdom that have essentially committed themselves to keeping the embassy in Tel Aviv and not moving it. I think the pro-Trump faction among the Tories may be still thinking about moving the embassy, but I don't think they have any power right now. The Tory party is about to collapse because of their terrible economic policies. So I think that the situation, and look, if you really look at it, the situation we have that exists in Israel is a result of long-term British policy. And I don't think we should count on the British to do anything that's right. On the other hand, there's a climate now where they can't make a move. So I think they're somewhat boxed in.
Right, Mr. Ali, your point is well taken. Mr. Alturk, what are the expectations from the Palestinian side as far as we talk about the UK recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel? Do you think after Australia's decision they are going to think over this decision?
I agree with Mr. Harley's position that the British right now, they have their own problem, which will not create other problems right now by shifting their embassy from Tel Aviv to East Jerusalem. But we keep something in mind that actually the problem of Palestine was created by the UK. They bring the Jew from nowhere, from European countries, to solve the problem of the Jew there and send them to create a problem in Palestine. And just going back before 100 years was idea of establishing a Jewish state in Argentina, in Uganda, and one of the options was Palestine. And the British support that option because they want to create a problem in the Middle East. And actually they succeed in that. And there is going to be no stability without finding a just solution for the Palestinian issue, without getting the right of return for 7 million refugees, Palestinian refugees around the world, to come back to their own home and territories in the land of Palestine before 1948. So, what is the British? Even the British, before we request them in when they give the declaration of the Foreign Minister of Mr. Balfour in 1917, he giving a promise to establishing a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. We ask them to at least to be sorry for that decision. What they do, on the other hand, they celebrate 100 years of that occasion as a national day in England. So they refuse to even say sorry for the Palestinian people suffering from what they create for us in that time. So if they're taking that step, I think later on they will facing more and more problems. As example, USA right now losing the support from many countries around the world because they are using double standard. They are supporting Zionist Israelis' criminal actions blindly. If the British and other European countries do the same, they're going to lose their supporters around the world, because using double standards is not acceptable for anyone anymore, even for their own people. During the war of Gaza last year, when Israelis attacked Gaza, we found a lot of march, a lot of people going the streets against the criminal action by Israelis against the Palestinian people. In the USA, was about 50 areas going in the street against the Israelis' actions. UK, in London, in other countries, all over the world was refusing what is happening on the ground by the Israelis. So the world is changed. Their own people are changed. So the public opinion is changed. They are not supporting Israel anymore. They are looking what you are doing. You are making us suffering, making Palestinians suffering, and not supporting. A few days before, I saw videos from some of parliament members in some European countries speaking that you armed Ukrainian people to fight the Russians when they are attacking their own homeland. Why you are keep blind and you keep silence about the action of Israelis against the Palestinians since 70 years until now, and you didn't arm the Palestinian people to fight back the Israelis who have the power to kill them? Why you didn't arm the Palestinian people to fight back? So the public opinion around the world is changed. So later on, even these governments who are supporting Israel and starting thinking of shifting their embassies from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, they're going to lose their power, and they're going to become one of the people which the people are already against them. So the world has changed, and we are really satisfied with that. And one of the great things that two things is supporting that issue. First, since 70 years until now, a Palestinian people are keep struggle this injustice, what's happened with us. We're getting support from many countries around the world, especially Pakistani people. We appreciate, since Qaid Adam until now, Pakistan never turned their back to us. They are keeping supporting us in our fight in all the ways they can, all the power they can have in their hands. Many of other countries, Muslim Arab countries, China, many others are supporting Palestinians in this struggle. Second thing, that the radicalism of Israel, the criminal action on the ground against the Palestinians, makes the people take off their black glasses and see the reality on the ground what is happening. What's happening is a criminal apartheid system ruling in Israel and kill people in cool blood. Killing children, women, old people, young people, don't care about anything. They are feeling they are above the world. They are above the international community. They are above the international resolutions. They are above the international law. No one can ask them World is changing and keep it changing in favor of Palestine. And with your support, we are stronger. With the support of all our friends around the world, all the supporters of human rights, supporters of justice, we are stronger, and we keep fighting until we getting our freedom, our independence, and establishing our own independent state on the Palestinian territories, with Jerusalem as it is capital.
That is exactly what Prime Minister Mr. Mohammed Shatai has also said. From the camp of sacrifices, Jenin camp, we say that blood of martyrs will not go in vain. This struggle is cumulative process, generation after generation, sacrifices after sacrifices. Dr. Yamin, do you think there is going to be a little bit of think over regarding the decision at the hand when we specifically talk about the British authorities after the Australian decision? And how do you think after this Australian decision, how is it going to impact Australia's relations with the rest of the Western countries?
Tehami Saab, the original sin was committed by Britain. And again, there are similarities. What happened in Kashmir, the unfair partition, caused problems in Kashmir, and they linger on there. Similarly, Britain was totally complicit in creating the Zionist state, the annexation of Palestine by Lord Allenby in 1970, the Balfour Declaration, so many other things. The Brits were complicit in whatever happened over there. And after the British Empire collapsed or diminished in size, their place was replaced by the United States of America. And they're both Anglo-Saxons, they are cousins, they're related to each other. Brits toe the line of the United States of America. Whatever United States does, the Brits also do the same.
This problem was handed over to the United Nations.
They handed it over and they toe the line. They will, whatever the United States do as a younger cousin or younger sibling, they copy it, they imitate it. Australia has taken a position, but Australia has also, Penny Wong has also said that we remain a friend of Israel. It was conditional. She also was not very upfront. They have to, because you see there are five eyes.
Definitely the ties are not only vis-a-vis Palestinian issue, there are a lot of other avenues.
Australians have very strong ties with the United States. They are part of the Five Eyes. Right. The five English-speaking countries, United States of America, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they are, by and large, they are the same bloc.
When specifically talk about Australian decision, she went on to say that the 2018 move had undermined peace and put Australia out of the step with majority of international community. What does that mean? It does depict that a majority of the international community stands on the side of the Palestinians, and Australia did something in contravention to that, and now it wants to come back into the league.
I think it had more to do with domestic politics, because as you yourself said, that she wants to, Penny Wong said she wanted to undo wrong which was committed by the previous Prime Minister, Mr. Morrison. So I think she was reversing a decision which was taken by the previous government, more for the domestic gallery than for the international audience. I don't think Australia also has the courage to stand up to the United States of America. They are part of the AUKUS, they are a strategic ally of the United States of America, and they will not go out on a limb to defy the United States of America. That's my honest opinion about it. Yeah.
Dr. Yamin, let's go to Mr. Harley. Mr. Harley, do you want to add something to this particular thing when we talk specifically about this statement by Penny Wong that the 2018 move had undermined peace and put Australia out of step with majority of international communities? So that depicts that Australia did something that was in contradiction to the standing of the international community in general.
Well, I would be more impressed if the Australians, instead of making a unilateral decision, went to the United Nations and demanded a solution to the Palestinian situation by demanding the end to Israeli occupation. I mean, it's one thing, and I think the comment before that it was domestic politics, I think that's pretty much accurate, that it was a move against the old Morrison regime. But for it to be meaningful, you have to stand up against the division of the world that's largely the result of the geopolitics from Britain, from the beginning of the 20th century, which included the Balfour Declaration, which included the mess they made of the Indian subcontinent, which you're talking about also in terms of Kashmir. The British did all of this, and the United States continues to stand by the British in these things. The United States has never had a fully independent policy towards Israel, except when President Eisenhower told the Israelis, the British, and the French to get out of the Sinai in 1956. So the right thing for Australia to do would be to go to the United Nations, go to every other institution, and say, we're standing for justice now, we demand justice for the Palestinians, and the step to move the embassy is one step. But in itself, I wouldn't make more of it than that. Australia is still a controlled entity of, someone mentioned AUKUS, of the Five Eyes. You still have an Anglo-American policy, which is opposed by most of the world right now. And I think now's the time to break with that policy. And one of the most dramatic ways would be to do it involving the continued support from the United States and the British for Israeli occupation, to end that. And that's what I think the Australians should do if they're really serious.
Right, Ms. Harley, when we specifically talk about the deal of the century, as it was dubbed by former President Donald Trump, he eliminated the U.S. financial assistance to Palestinians altogether, and also the termination of the contributions to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And now, curtailing this particular amount or the financial assistance, how do you see that?
Well, the United States is continuing to support Israel. And by the way, it goes both ways. The Israelis have enormous influence in the U.S. Congress through the various lobbying groups from the Jewish community and also now from the Christian Zionist community, the so-called Christian Zionist community, which had a big impact on Donald Trump. So by cutting off the money to the Palestinians, I think that was a rotten decision that he made, but it was part of a deal that he made to get the Israelis to talk with the Emirates and others. You know, this whole operation that Trump put in motion around the Abraham Accords, to me, is really a fraud, because it doesn't address the real issue, which we're beginning to see addressed by what's happening now with Turkey's role, with the Saudi role, and others, moving away from the Anglo-American control. So I think what Trump did was unfortunate. I don't know, you know, there are people who are saying Trump is going to be president again in 2024. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think the world is moving in a different direction. And sooner or later, hopefully sooner, it will affect the situation with the Palestinians. And that includes not just providing aid again, but actually supporting what was originally put forward with the Oslo Accords, a real commitment to industrialize and develop a capital goods sector in the Palestinian state. So it's not just a question of financial aid, it's really a question of committing to the development of a sovereign nation. And until that's stated, beyond a UN resolution, until that's stated by the United States government and the British government and the European Union, it's not going to happen, because Israel will never relent their control.
Right, Mr. Harley, midterm election in the U.S. are very much around the corner. How do you think this issue is going to play in U.S. politics right now, vis-a-vis Australia's decision?
Oh, you're asking me that?
Yeah, Mr. Harley, please go ahead.
I think it's probably not even going to be covered in the American press. You know, the American press right now is covering Trump, they're covering Ukraine. You know, there's very little interest in the media. And part of the reason for that is that there was becoming some support in the United States for the Palestinian situation. But it's been completely submerged in this Ukraine war, in which the United States and NATO are moving to do everything possible to try to destroy Russia. So they're more focused on that. So I don't think, from what I can tell from looking at the U.S. media and from talking to contacts in the United States, there's very little recognition that this even happened.
Right, Mr. Ali, your point is well taken. Mr. Alturk, now there is a blockade in Nablus and the surrounding areas. Around 200,000 people have been facing difficulties there. Normal life has been disrupted. The economic activity has got a bad impact because of this crackdown. And there are critics, and the people from Palestine are of the view that the authorities in Israel are doing it for to get that mileage in November 1st elections.
Actually, all the Palestinian people are suffering, not only 200,000 persons. You are looking to Gaza, it is under closure since 16 years. There is more than 2 million there. Just a few days before, Shafat refugees camp in Jerusalem was under closure. This is agenda of Israel. This is daily actions by Israelis, because they keep in mind, as long as they keep the Palestinians suffering, they're going to transfer and looking for become refugees in some other countries. But what happened in 1948 will not happen again. We will not leaving our homeland for the Israelis. We are not going to scared. We are not going to. We will be patient of our suffering, and we will keep struggle until we getting our freedom. So whatever has happened, everything is changed. The Palestinians become stronger by getting support from many countries around the world. Maybe this is not clear enough right now, but later on everything going to be changed.
Right.
Mr. Trump, as example, let's see what kind of gifts he giving for the Israelis. First, he shift his embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Second, he makes a deal of sanitary which make our homeland smaller, according to his knowledge.
Right.
Third thing, he denied the number of Palestinian refugees since 1948 until now. He decreased it from 7 million to 50,000. He said that only the Palestinians who was living in that time and left their own homelands are Palestinian refugees. The next generation, their sons and grandsons, not refugees. See, he denied what is the UNRWA numbering said. Other things, he said that he make countries under pressure to normalize their relationship with Israel. He make other countries under pressure to shift their embassy, remove their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What happened to him? He lose the elections in the next. He only was president in power for 4 years. And right now he started speaking of the Jew in USA are not a good people because they didn't support him in the elections and they support Mr. Biden. So this is advice from our side as a Palestinian, from my side, to all the support of Israel. Please open your Google, open your mobile, looking in Google, what's the meaning of Jewim, which is the non-Jew. How the Zionists looking for them, what you are for them. After that, you have the options. Keeping supporting Israel, remain supporting them in blindly, or using your own mind and know what the reality happened in the ground.
Right, Dr. Yamin, unfortunately we are short of time, and very brief last remarks.
Palestinians have to make a huge struggle. I don't think victory is around the corner, neither for them, nor for the Kashmiris, nor for the other oppressed people in the world. So a huge struggle lies ahead of them, and United States and Israel are best of friends. They will not do anything which will hurt Israel.
Right, Mr. Harley, your last comments, please.
Well, while I generally agree with what he just said, I think in the United States and in Europe, those people who are committed to justice and freedom have to put the Palestinian issue in first place and take this seriously as an opportunity to change history. And why not move to break the power of the British-Israeli policy occupation, which has continued to oppress the people of Palestine?
Right. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Harley Schlanger from Potsdam, Germany, political analyst from Schiller Institute. Really appreciate your time. And we were also honored to have been joined by Mr. Nader Alturk, Counselor, Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Media and Civil Society, Embassy of State of Palestine in Pakistan.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate your time coming all the way over here.
I really appreciate your generous to give me the opportunity to be with you today, and really appreciate the support of Pakistan government, president, people, political groups. All of them are on the same page in supporting Palestine. With your support, we are stronger. We will keep our struggle until we get victory, inshallah, very soon. This is a promise of Allah, and we keep that. We are believing that for sure. For your support, we are stronger again and again. Dr. Yamin speak about our team which come to support Pakistan. This was a very small things in paying back for Pakistan for your long support since Qa'id Azam period until now.
It was indeed a heartening gesture.
So it was a very small things. We do nothing.
Pakistan continues to
It's our
stand
pleasure to
with
be
the
with
Palestinian brethren.
And one thing I just need to say as for closing my words, Israel was establishing in one fake, one lie, that all people will die and young people will forget. So old people died really, but the younger people and the next generation still keep their struggle until they get their just and get establishing their own state.
Indeed, it was an honor to have you in the studio, Mr. Nader Alturk and Dr. Tughral Yamin, senior analyst. Thank you very much for your time. Also, it's always enlightening to have discussion with you on different topics. And now the situation not only in the West Bank, but also in the Gaza Strip is not only scary, it is precarious. And specifically when we talk about the Gaza Strip, after the relentless bombing by the Israeli occupation forces over there, the Palestinians in the territory are not allowed to take in the construction material, and the drinking water and electricity is also not available to them, despite repeated censures by a number of countries from around the world. Israeli authorities continue to build illegal settlements in the Palestinian territories in contravention to the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Now, it happens to be the responsibility of the United Nations on the agenda of which is the Palestinian issue since a long time. And they really need to take the Israeli authorities to the task and impress upon them to implement the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. So with this note, we come to the end of today's show. Until the next one, take good care of yourselves.